Hello readers! I read 9 books in January, and if you stick with me, I'll fill you in. The first book I finished in 2020 was The One by Kiera Cass, and that was the third book in the Selection series, which I know I'm super behind on, but I did start that series as recommended by my friend Chloe from Brunette Bibliophile. That was the third book. I don't want to tell you too much about the third one, but I will tell you a little bit about the first one just in case you haven't read it or haven't heard of it. But The Selection is a story that follows America's singer. I know, but it takes place I guess in a kind of dystopian time, and the countries have merged and split up in different ways, and the Prince of Ilia is looking for someone to marry. So they kind of have this tradition of doing this bachelor-esque thing where they invite a whole bunch of different girls from different classes. They're in classes based on a number. The highest class is 1, and then I think the lowest is 8. But people get selected across the classes and they get to hang out with the prince, and there's cameras and people are watching. Anyway, I gave the last book 5 stars. I'm sure there are problems with it. You know, it's definitely not perfect, but I gave it 5 stars because I felt like I was so invested in the story at that point. And it was really just like popping candy because it was a very easy read and you just kind of get hooked with what's happening, and I really enjoyed it. And I'll definitely keep reading more of Kiera Cass's work. The next book I read was Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I read this with the BookTube Chicks book club for January. I believe Forever Interrupted is Taylor Jenkins Reid's first book. It's about a woman who ends up kind of having this whirlwind romance with someone, and they go very quickly, they end up getting married, and just as quickly he ends up dying in a tragic accident. And so throughout the whole book, she's processing the loss, she's processing her grief, and she's dealing with people basically telling her, get over it, you were only with him for this amount of time, you shouldn't be feeling it so heavily. So you get to see those two sides, and you know, his mother is in the picture, and so there's a bunch of complications there. I gave Forever Interrupted 3 stars. I did enjoy it. I listened to the audiobook while also reading the book. I think you can kind of tell that this was Taylor Jenkins Reid's first work. She has changed and evolved a lot. I was kind of surprised that the book didn't have the same gravitas as The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo or Daisy Jones and the Six. Even though there were some heavy themes in the story, I still felt like it just didn't have the same weight that some of her newer works do. And again, I gave that 3 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was Mindfuck by Christopher Wiley. And you may or may not already know Christopher Wiley was the whistleblower for the Cambridge Analytica debacle. If you are unfamiliar with that, definitely Google it or pick up Mindfuck. Basically, he walks you through how Cambridge Analytica tapped into Facebook and pulled data from millions of people in order to feed them propaganda, likely swaying the 2016 election. And it was just really mind-blowing to see how our likes, right, the things that we like on Facebook and what they used with that, what they gathered from that information, and how they targeted the most susceptible people in order to play on their fears and to get them to show up to protests and to rallies and to believe conspiracy theories. And it was both fascinating and horrifying. He also explains how Brexit was started by Steve Bannon, and that was like the kickoff point of them using this for their own agenda. I know I'm not doing it justice right now because there was just so much information in that book, but I would strongly recommend everyone read it, because it's one thing to vote for someone you think is the best candidate, but to think about the fact that people were targeted and manipulated to believe lies, and that's how they use their vote. That's just like, that's really scary. But I think it's necessary for all of us to be aware of that so that we can be diligent in regards to how we share things and what kind of information we provide, because it is being used against us. I gave Mindfuck 5 stars, and again, I would recommend it pretty much to everyone. The next book I read was The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. The Last Wish consists of a lot of short stories, and you can see from reading the stories that that's kind of where they pulled the material for the Witcher season 1. There were stories in there that you'll definitely find familiar. These were stories that he had published on a website and I guess collected them and put them into the book, but I still really enjoyed them. Give you more backstory in regards to Geralt and some of the things that he's dealt with and what he struggles with, and I gave that 4 stars and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was Happily Ever After by Kiera Cass, and this was a bunch of short stories from the Selection series universe. You got to see a little bit about the prince's perspective in regards to when he meets America and some of the other contestants and what they did after the competition, and you get to see insight into those characters. I really enjoyed it and I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book I read was And the Ocean Was Our Sky by Patrick Ness, and this is a retelling of Moby Dick from the whale's perspective. I've actually never read Moby Dick. I don't know how I would feel about it if I had. I didn't give this a rating because I listened to the audiobook. It was very short, it's about 2 hours, but I kind of feel like I need to reread it to fully process what I read. This is like the 3rd or 4th time I've tried to read this book. I just feel like I'm not doing it justice, but at the same time, I don't really care that much about it. I don't know. But because it's so short, I think I will sit down and read it one more time so that I can rate it and move on with my life. If you've read that book and you liked it, please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. The other book I read, and again, this was by audiobook, was This Is How You Lose the Time War, and it's by 2 authors. Hello, just popping in really quickly to say that this book was written by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. I ended up listening to this on the way back from Tampa one day, and so I was able to get through it in a day, but it is sci-fi and it gets very technical. There are 2 perspectives. We follow Red and Blue, and they're from 2 different factions. One is very organic and flowers and of the earth, and the other one is more technology based, and they're basically fighting each other for control in the Time War. I decided to pick up this book because it was recommended by Katie Tastic, but as she mentions, she reread it, and I think a book like this definitely benefits from that. So I've just borrowed it from the library. I'm gonna go ahead and reread it with my eyes instead of just listening with my ears to make sure that I process the entire story. It's definitely lyrical and poetic. I think at times I felt like the authors were trying a little too hard to be clever, but I may feel differently when I reread it. The next book is a book that I read while participating in Kate's Side-a-thon, the Dawson's Creek Readathon, and it was Simon and the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. Again, a little bit late to the party there. I've actually seen the movie and really enjoyed it, but the book was pretty great too. So we follow Simon, who has not come out as gay to his friends and family yet, but if I remember correctly, he writes into a Tumblr or a blog or something, and then someone starts corresponding with him. And so for the majority of the book, they're kind of going back and forth, but they don't know who each other are, and they develop a relationship. He develops a relationship with Blue, who he's writing to. And so we get to see them fall in love via text, but also Simon is trying to guess who this person is. And then things happen and it gets really messy, but I really enjoyed it. I do enjoy Becky Albertalli's writing. I think she's funny and she just has a way with stories that feel very authentically teenage. I gave that 4 stars. And I'm looking forward to picking up more of Becky Albertalli's work. I did read The Upside of Unrequited, and I also have Leah on the Offbeat. I don't know how I'll feel about that one, but I do have it and I am going to read it hopefully soon. I have my bullet journal in my lap so that I could remember all the books that I've read, and unfortunately for me, I did not include all of the authors, so you will see editing Desirai pop in a couple of times to fill you in on who the author is. Another book that I read for Cape Side-a-thon was The Intermission. It's me again. This is written by Alyssa Friedland. and this was about a married couple who had kind of stopped being intimate and they were struggling in their marriage. They essentially both had something that they were keeping from each other, right? And so it's hard to maintain a sense of intimacy if you're hiding something from your partner. I don't know if either of the things they were hiding were necessarily like huge, but they felt huge to each of them. So their marriage just started slowly falling apart, and Cass decides that she wants to move across the country to California and kind of have a little bit of a break. I gave the intermission 3 stars, and while I know that sometimes these things happen in marriages, there was just something kind of annoying about both of the characters, and I was just really uncomfortable with the kinds of things that they were hiding and that they did during their separation. Obviously, they get to set those rules up, but it just, I don't know, it didn't sit well with me. So, you know, I accepted the story, I enjoyed it for what it was, but it didn't like really resonate with me. And the last book I read was a nonfiction book called Unfuck Your Habitat. Yep, hi, this is written by Rachel Hoffman. And I really, really liked it. I think it may have been based on her blog and blog posts and stuff like that, but she provided a lot of really good tips in regards to how to start cleaning up your environment and how marathon cleaning doesn't really work long term. And I think the best tip that I got out of there, which I've been adopting, is just to do like 20-minute sessions, a 20-minute cleanup session, and then take a 10-minute break. And you can do multiple if you want to, or you could just do 20 minutes a day or 20 minutes every other day or whatever. But there's something about 20 minutes that's just really, really digestible and really possible. So we in our household have kind of been adopting that and cleaning up in like 20-minute little spurts, and it's made a world of difference. The author doesn't just provide tips in regards to what you can do, but also, you know, why we end up having messes, what kind of struggles cause us to behave that way. She also provides information on how you can help a friend who might be struggling. So she shows just a bunch of different perspectives in regards to how we maintain our environment, and I thought all of it was really valuable. Again, it was short. I listened to the audiobook. I think at some point I want to pick up the actual book because there were cool little exercises in there. You know, like it would randomly say like, okay, take 5 minutes and collect all the garbage, or just little things that she kind of gamified cleaning up slightly. And I think for people who struggle to make the time to clean up on a regular basis, I thought it was pretty cool and I found it really valuable. And I gave that 4 stars on Goodreads. Well, that's everything I've read in January, and that happens to be a lot of books. Actually, I think I usually average around 4 books a month, so the fact that I read 9 while working overtime kind of blows my mind. But let me know how you did. What was your favorite read for January? Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified when I upload new videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.